It's funny. So many of us walk around thinking we know exactly how someone else evaluates us. How they measure worth, how they determine connection. But here's the thing, men often don't tell you directly what they're looking for. Instead, they put you through what I like to call silent tests, little moments, unspoken signals that reveal whether you're the one they truly want. And I say this because Matthew Hussey himself reminds us connection isn't always articulated, it's felt. But if you don't know the signs, you can feel confused, uncertain, even begin to misread what's happening. So today you're going to learn how to recognize those tests. Honor yourself through them and rise confidently, not because you're trying to pass them, but because you know your value. Let's start with something so subtle, so innocuous that you might not even notice it. The first silent test is what I'll call the comfort hesitation. You share something small, maybe it's a bad day at work or a weird thing your cat did that morning, and he reacts maybe with a half smile, maybe with a pause. Do you think, was that too much? Did I overshare? But actually what he's doing is testing whether you're comfortable enough with yourself to be authentic, whether you're secure enough to let your quirks surface. Matthew Hussey always says, authenticity is magnetic. And that's because when you share what makes you uniquely you, even in small glimpses, you're allowing him to see the real thing. That hesitation, it's not rejection. It's a moment where he's testing whether you can be yourself even when things are less than polished. And that's always a good sign. If you sense that, lean into it, laugh at your cat's shenanigans, let that moment be real. Then there's the space gauge. You notice that he sometimes takes a little time before replying to your message, or he's quieter for a bit. Your mind immediately races, does he not care? But what he's actually doing is testing how you respond to space, not in a manipulative way, but in assessing whether you'll melt down or whether you'll remain grounded. It's a modern version of when I disappear for a beat, do you think the world's ending? And the beautiful thing is, if you don't crumble, if you don't flood him with anxious texts, you're showing strength and self-containment. Matthew Hussey would say that's exactly the kind of presence that draws a man in, not clinginess, but calm. Because a partner who knows their own center is far more attractive than someone whose value feels tethered to his messages. Now let's talk about the observational test. You mentioned something almost offhand, maybe something you like to do or something that reveals your personality. He notices it later. He remembers that detail and brings it up. That's not luck. That's a test. He's paying attention. He's checking whether you notice when he remembers things about you. When he does, you lean in, not to gasp, you remembered that, but to show that you noticed you're being seen. Part of what makes a pair sing is when both see and value the small things. And Matthew Hussey teaches us that love often lives in the details, and so noticing the detail is the test, and remembering you notice is the answer. There's also the classic challenge test. Maybe you suggest something, plan something. Maybe it's a simple date idea, or a recommendation, and he pushes back, maybe gently, maybe with teasing resistance. You feel that little nervous flutter. But what's happening is he's exploring your boundaries and expecting you to articulate for yourself who you are, what you like, what you want to do. In his workshops, Matthew Hussey often says that attraction thrives when there are boundaries and clarity, not when everything is mushy and agreeable. So that resistance is not rejection, it's an invitation to show where you stand, to surface your conviction. And when you stand with quiet confidence, yes, I thought that would be fun. Here's why. You're not being stubborn, you're being real. Next up, the fun test. He brings up something absurd, maybe a random meme or a silly scenario, and you're tempted to dismiss it. But he's testing whether you can laugh freely, play in the moment. Attraction is not always serious. Sometimes it's playful. When you allow humor to land, when you respond without judgment, you're signaling that you can enjoy connection, flex with spontaneity. As Matthew Hussey says, playfulness is one of the strongest emotional bonds because it creates a safe place to drop masks and just be alive. So if he's dropping goofy things and you don't run from them, you win that test by being real joy. Another one, call it the consistency probe. If plans change, or if he says he'll call and then calls the next day instead, do you instantly assume the worst, or do you hold steady knowing delay doesn't negate interest, particularly when life happens? He's testing your ability to trust in reliability without needing total control. If you know how to say, sounds good, even when things shift, you're showing emotional maturity. That's what Matthew Hussey means when he emphasizes steady presence, knowing how to ride the waves without losing yourself. Then there's the future feeler. Maybe he says something like, I've been thinking it might be nice to visit a museum sometime, or you'd love my friend group, you'd fit right in. It's not planning. It's not forward-facing, it's testing your openness to being imagined. And how you respond reveals whether you're open to being woven into someone's life story. You don't have to commit, but you do want to respond with warmth and curiosity. Tell me more. Who's friends? That's the difference between shutting things down and letting them breathe. As Matthew Hussey notes, someone inviting you into their world, not out of duty, but because they want you there, that's attraction. And you affirm it by showing interest in that world, even if you're not ready to move in. Let's not skip the vulnerable check. He talks about a fear or something that makes him feel awkward, like opening up in front of his family. Or not being sure of a career move, and you might feel compelled to shield him, fix things, reassure endlessly. But often what he's testing is whether you let him feel, whether you validate him without needing to solve. When you listen with empathy, not problem solve, you're saying, I get you. You're brave for even naming that. Matthew Hussey often points out that emotional safety beats heroic rescuing because attraction blooms in the space where you can be seen, not fixed. And when you remain steady, calm, comfortable in emotional intimacy, you pass that test by giving him trust without taking over. Another, the social litmus. He's with friends or with people around, and he watches how you handle the social dynamics. Do you stay yourself? Do you join in? Do you tease back, or do you shrink, people please, or explode? He's seeing how you hold space. How you fit into different contexts. Not so everything revolves around him, but so you're congruent. That's incredibly magnetic. Matthew Hussey always says that uniqueness in connection isn't about isolation. It's about being yourself in many rooms. If you maintain that ease, that's a powerful silent test passed. Then perhaps there's the independence probe. You share an interest or commitment. Maybe you're finishing a night class or training for a marathon or focusing on your own passion project. He asks about it, maybe casually. He's testing your self-direction, your life outside of any relationship script. You don't need his validation. But you don't make him feel like he's excluded. You respond with enthusiasm. Yes, I'm doing it. I love it. Thanks for asking. That signals drive and a full life, which is extremely attractive. As Matthew Hussey says, completeness is irresistible. You might also encounter your reaction is the message moment. He says something ambiguous. And maybe it's a frustrating comment about his day. I hate how my boss did that. And you immediately jump to cheer him up, to solve it. But what he may be testing is your presence, whether you can stay with discomfort without needing an emotional rescue. Sometimes the strongest message is in just being there calm, listening, doing less emotionally often says more, because you show trust in his capacity to hold his own. The non-verbal alignment test is another. Observe how he tracks you in a room. Does he turn toward you when you speak? Does he watch your face? Does his attention stay even when small distractions pop up? That's a test of connection and how you maintain that moment by staying engaged, smiling, letting your body speak too acknowledges that it's not performance, it's presence. Matthew Hussey reminds us that presence is one of the greatest unspoken languages. You pass the silent test when you give presence back. Now, don't hear me telling you to pass tests like it's some game. Nothing about what I'm saying is a checklist. The power isn't in passing. It's in recognizing, staying grounded, and choosing authentic responses. Every time you meet a silent test with your real self, you're not manipulating, you're aligning. I want you to consider every test as an invitation to show how beautifully you understand your worth, how elegantly you hold your own. A, how effortlessly you relate. When he hesitates, you don't collapse, you breathe. When he pushes, you invite clarity. When he shares, you listen. When he plays, you play. When he brings you into his world, you lean in. And that consistent, courageous authenticity, that's what men truly want. And here's a thought often, we think the tests are about proving ourselves. But what if the tests are only there to filter for the people who won't collapse at the first moment of ambiguity? Because authenticity, presence, a clarity, those are rare. They're rarer still in their ability to stay calm under emotional uncertainty. So when you pass those tests by simply being you, by staying steady, you don't just succeed in being chosen, you rewrite what it means to be chosen on your own terms. Matthew Hussey would remind you that real romantic wisdom isn't about conforming. It's about being the fullest version of yourself and trusting that the right person will find the irresistible. Be okay with silence. Be okay with space. Be okay with questions. Be curious about yourself more than anxious for answers. Be your own center so perfectly that no test collapses you. Because you're not the subject of the test. You're the author of your story. And when the right person meets that, he doesn't just want you, he recognizes he's lucky to be there. So remember the comfort hesitation, lean into authenticity. The space gauge, stay centered. Observational test, welcome that detail attention. The challenge test, use your clarity. The fun test, laugh with full abandon. Consistency, be steady. Future feeler, let curiosity lead. Vulnerability, listen, don't fix. Social dynamics, stay congruent. Independence, shine on your own. Emotional presence, be calm. Non-verbal alignment, stay present. Because these aren't tests to win. They're invitations to show up, to be seen, to hold yourself with grace. When you do, the quietest of moments becomes the loudest conviction you're worthy. This isn't another script to follow. It's the essence of what Matthew Hussey has always taught. Connection begins with presence, clarity, and integrity. You don't need to beg to be chosen. You simply need to be unforgettable. Men often communicate less directly than women when it comes to emotional or relational evaluations. Instead of laying everything out in words, they tend to observe how a woman behaves in various situations. These moments aren't always dramatic, they're quiet, almost invisible to someone not paying attention. He watches how you respond when plans shift, how you handle a moment of silence, how you act when he's vulnerable or when things don't go smoothly. Each of these scenarios functions as a silent test, not because he's trying to play games, but because he's feeling out whether the connection feels safe, strong and real. He's asking himself questions. Can she handle uncertainty? Does she stay grounded under pressure? Is she genuine or performative? These silent tests give him insight into your emotional depth, your authenticity, your self-respect. You may never hear the words, "I'm testing you," but every time a man introduces space, contradiction, or even a little chaos, he's watching your response, not to judge you, but to understand whether you can truly connect in the real messy moments of life. He wants to know, will she still be herself when things aren't perfect? That answer is what helps him decide if this is something real. Authenticity and emotional security are the foundation of true attraction. When a woman is deeply connected to her own worth, she doesn't need to perform, impress, or mold herself to fit someone else's expectations. That kind of confidence is magnetic. Men sense it when you speak with honesty, when you say no without guilt. When you express your quirks without trying to make them more acceptable. It shows that you're not afraid to be seen as you are, which creates a powerful space for real connection. Emotional security, on the other hand, is about how you respond when things aren't certain. When a man pulls back slightly, doesn't reply right away, or expresses doubt in his own life, he's not just watching your words, he's feeling your energy. Do you panic, overthink, try to fix things? Or do you remain calm, grounded, trusting that your value isn't determined by his mood or availability? That stability tells him you're not looking for a man to complete you, but to complement you. Men are drawn to women who are emotionally consistent because it makes them feel safe enough to be fully themselves. It's not about being emotionless. It's about knowing your own center and not losing it. Presence, boundaries, and playfulness create the emotional texture that makes a connection feel alive. When you're fully present with someone, they feel it. You're not half distracted, not scanning for what to say next. You're there, responding in real time, engaged with your whole self. That presence is rare, and men notice it more than you think. Boundaries, too, are incredibly attractive, not because they create distance, but because they show that you respect yourself. When you say no with kindness, when you express what you're okay with and what you're not, you're demonstrating self-awareness and clarity. That creates trust. Men feel safer with a woman who knows who she is and doesn't compromise herself to keep the peace. But it's not all seriousness. Playfulness is just as vital. A man wants to feel that you can relax, joke, tease, and not take everything so heavily. Those little shared laughs, the spontaneous side comments, the moments where you both let go of control, that's where real intimacy begins. Playfulness is emotional freedom. Together, these three traits, presence, boundaries, and playfulness, signal that you're both emotionally available and emotionally resilient. It shows you can handle the highs and lows of connection without losing the joy in it. Many women fall into the trap of trying to pass a man's tests as if it's a performance to earn approval. But the truth is, the most powerful thing you can do is remember that you're not here to prove your worth. You're here to live it. These tests, whether silent or subtle, are not opportunities to seek validation, but moments to reflect your own self-trust. When you respond to uncertainty with confidence, when you stand in your truth without needing to be liked, you flip the dynamic entirely. You're no longer asking, am I enough for him? You're inviting him to ask, am I the right man for her? That's a shift in energy that men deeply feel. A woman who knows her value doesn't scramble to fix tension, doesn't mold herself to avoid rejection, and doesn't cling when someone pulls away. She understands that her presence is a privilege, not a persuasion tactic. Men are far more drawn to the woman who lives from her center, who doesn't audition for love, but simply shows up fully. That's when the right man doesn't just choose you. He sees you as someone he'd never want to risk losing. Because you didn't pass his test. You outgrew it. Ultimately, the silent tests men use aren't traps. They're reflections of how deeply a man is observing the emotional space between you. They reveal whether he sees something real, something lasting. And the truth is, you don't need to study these tests to pass them. You need to live your truth so fully that passing becomes effortless. When you lead with authenticity, hold yourself with calm strength, maintain joyful presence, and stop performing for someone else's approval. You change the dynamic entirely. You stop chasing connection and start attracting alignment. The right man doesn't just notice that. You become unforgettable to him. Because real connection isn't about becoming who someone wants. It's about being so grounded in who you are that the right person can't help but want more.